up, my Toronto. VK on the beat. Check. I'm in Toronto where you wanna get a city love. I'm from Toronto where you wanna get a city love. I'm in Toronto like we wanna get a city love. My city love me back for my city love.
Welcome to episode 1587 of Toronto Mic'd, proudly brought to you by Great Lakes Brewery, a fiercely independent craft brewery who believes in supporting communities, good times, and brewing amazing beer. Order online for free local home delivery in the GTA. Palma Pasta. Enjoy the taste of fresh, homemade Italian pasta and entrees from Palma Pasta in Mississauga and Oakville. The Advantaged Investor Podcast from Raymond James Canada. Learn how to plan, invest, and live smarter. Season 7 of Yes, We Are Open, an award-winning podcast from Monaris, hosted by FOTM Al Grego. RecycleMyElectronics.ca. Committing to our planet's future means properly recycling our electronics of the past. And Ridley Funeral Home, pillars of the community since 1921. Today, making his Toronto Mic debut is Robb Nash.
What's up, brother? I love this setup in here. And 1,500 episodes. Congrats, man. That's huge.
1,587 today. And what a pleasure it is to meet you. Firstly, thank you for not hitting your head. But I want to just tell the listenership that for 1,500 plus episodes, I've been warning guests not to hit their head during the dip here. So there's a dip right above the studio. But you actually, if you stood up straight, you would hit your head in the regular part of this basement where nobody's hitting their head, maybe outside of Leo Rowden. So how tall a man are you, Robb Nash?
5'17".
I got to do the math now. All right, that's 5. Okay, 6. So you're 6'5".
6'5". Yeah, we some big boys in our family.
Yeah, you're the runt of the litter. Is that right?
Yeah, I got some big cousins. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, that's what are you eating? Where are you from? Manitoba, right?
Yeah, southern Manitoba. A farm kid, but yeah, mom's actually from Mexico. My dad's from Belize, Central America. So it's just my dad's whole family. Most of them still live in Belize, and visiting there is just remarkable. Like it's just the style of living is so different.
How so? Like you're selling me on this, but in Breaking Bad, when they were killing the guy, they were sending him to Belize. Like that was like code for we're gonna like eliminate this guy. But you're telling me Belize is actually Belize is actually a really nice place. Like
Belize is awesome. Yeah, and like. Well, I think the biggest difference for me, like the last time I went for like a few weeks, and I told one cousin I was coming. I just wanted to chill. Yeah. And then everybody found out I was there, big party. Next day, big party. Next day, big party. And like 50 people. And I was like, finally, I'm like, guys, I'm like, we don't have to do something every day. And they're like, well, what do you mean? I was like, well, don't you have jobs? And they're like, yeah. I'm like, what'd you tell your bosses? We told them our family's here. And I was like, that's it? And then my cousin came here a few months later. He's like, Rob. I'm like, hey, I'm here to hang out. And I was like, cool, I can meet you for coffee next Thursday at 8:45.
That's just different lifestyles. But they've got it figured out. You know, why do we put commerce and the daily grind? Why do we put these things ahead of spending time with family and enjoying life? Like you only have one life to live, right?
Well, for some of us too, but yep.
Well, you know, that's a good way to start, actually. So here's how I want to start this. I want to open by telling people, I want to tell people right now, there's a new documentary launching today.
Yeah.
If you're reading this, ... And basically, I'm just going to tease the world that this documentary is now available. And then we're going to have a chat. So we get some highlights and lowlights, and we're going to capture the Robb Nash essence here. And then we're going to revisit this documentary with some specifics on how the heck my listeners can consume this very important documentary that I have watched, and it blew my mind. And that's why I'm so grateful that you're actually here in the basement. Like you're not zooming in from Winnipeg.
No. How
long are you in Toronto for?
I'm here till Friday. So doing a little bit of media, but I'm here for the launch of the documentary. So yeah, this was the priority here, coming to see you though.
Well, you know what? I want to shout out a FOTM that's a mutual friend of ours. I want to shout out Jeff Rogers. So Jeff is the guy who said, hey, you should watch this. And then I watched it. And then I'm like, how do I get that, mountain of a man in my basement? And he's like, well, I can help arrange that. And here we are. So this is amazing that you're here.
I wouldn't advertise like that often. Like, how do I get this mountain of a man into my basement? Like, sounds like you're just trying to find
That's
one
part of the
body
fun,
part
right?
at a time, you know?
I often say, I've had that person in the basement. I got to work on my phrasing, Rob. Okay, why is there two B's in Rob?
I don't know. It just happened.
But this is on your birth certificate?
Something like that, yeah.
Okay, you didn't just add it for SEO purposes because there's probably a million Rob Nashes.
You know what is funny though? There is because I do a lot of work with my charity, and there is a Robb Nash with one B. He's a comedian, and I do get a lot of emails from him that say, "Hey, these people keep saying you inspired me a whole lot," and he goes, "That's not me. I'm sorry." So yeah, if you're going to look me up, it's Rob with two B's and Nash.
The Robb Nash Project.
Yeah.
Okay, and again, the documentaries. So if you're hearing this, it's launched, right? Like, is there a time today where this is available, or is it available at like the stroke of midnight last night? Like,
No.
if somebody listening now is like, Mike, I'm going to listen to the chat, but I'm actually going to watch if you're reading this right now and then come back. Like, can you actually see it right now?
So it's at 9:00 tonight on Eastern time. So
well, this is going to whet the appetite. We
Perfect.
should have timed it better. We could have like said right now. Okay.
Yeah.
So if you're reading this is the name of the doc. And now Robb Nash and I are going to have an unedited chat about this amazing story here. So this is the order of things for the listenership. You're going to listen to this conversation, then you're going to watch the documentary if you're reading this, and then you're going to share your awareness with someone who needs help, and then you're going to basically understand better the rising issue of suicide and mental health with today's youth here in Canada. Take me back, my friend. Really, I want to hear about the car crash, but maybe set the table like where you grew up and then basically this terrible car crash that you were in as a teenager.
Yeah, so grew up in a small town, Kleefeld, Manitoba, like literally a few hundred people. And yeah, as you mentioned before, I'm a big guy. I'm 6'5". So my identity was playing sports. That's how I made friends. I don't know that I'm not saying I would have been a pro athlete or anything, but when your identity is like, this is how I make friends, this is how I'm popular. And so that was it. I played sports. I'm 6'5", and as a teenager, you don't think much about life. I was really sheltered growing up. So that plays into the music conversation as we go here, because I grew up not allowed to listen to mainstream music really, or
What do you mean by that? Because you're right. I didn't tease as appropriately because I'm like, we're going to discover along the way, but you're a musician. I've got some of your music loaded up. There's so many mind blows along the way, but what kind of music would you have been exposed to growing up?
my parents had like 5 kids. They were all growing up, and they had a family like bluegrass band, like banjo and mandolin and like Southern gospel stuff. So, and then those siblings had the family band that I was never in, and then they were all getting old.
It's like the Carter family.
Yeah, moving out, and then I was born, but yeah, I was super sheltered. I didn't wasn't really allowed to watch mainstream movies and TV. And
So you didn't own Led Zeppelin 4 growing up?
I didn't. Nope. And
No
then,
Back in Black from AC/DC.
No. The only mainstream music I could really listen to is when there was a Chipmunk version or a Smurfs album, and then I was like, okay, that's cool. I had friends that introduced me to some music, but yeah, I was.
Do you remember the Mini Pops? Maybe you're too young for the Mini Pops.
Not Mini Pops, but I had the Smurfs and Chipmunks, so that was about it. But then at 15, I actually moved away. I had played a little bit of drums and guitar because my family was super musical, but I didn't make it into the family band. And then I moved away at 15 playing sports on a scholarship. And then
Which sport?
Just all round athlete, volleyball.
You're like
hockey,
Dave Winfield, all the sports. This
Yeah.
guy, Dave Winfield was drafted into 4 professional leagues because he played basketball. Of course, he played baseball. That's what he ended up playing pro. But there was two different basketball leagues of football, NFL, and of course Major League Baseball. He got drafted into 4 different leagues.
But I'm not trying to put myself in that league. I just was
You're Winfield-esque.
okay. Well, I was all right, but that is how I made friends, playing sports.
Right.
So I moved away at 15 to this high school and lived in dorm and stuff, and that's when people started saying like, "Oh, you can play guitar and drums," but I just wasn't into it. That wasn't my thing. Yeah. And then they were like, "Oh, can you play Nirvana? Can you play Green Day?" So that was like and at first I was like, "Oh, I'm not allowed to listen to that." I'm like, "Oh, wait, Mom and Dad aren't here."
Right.
And then I started hearing songs that weren't just 3 chords, and I started hearing what Slash was doing, and I'm like, you can do that on a guitar? And I was like, and then I just became obsessed, and I think annoyed people with music, but it was never something I was going to do for a living. Like my worst mark in school was music. Like,
oh wow,
yeah, I played some drums, but then they put all the sheet music in front of me, and I didn't know what that was.
You were going to be a neurosurgeon.
I would need a neurosurgeon.
We'll get to that.
Yeah. But and then I auditioned for the choir, and I didn't make it. My voice wasn't good enough. In fact, the choir teacher was like, "Why are you doing that?" I'm like, "Doing what?" They're like, "You sound like you've been smoking since you were 2." And I'm like, so, but that gritty voice would later end up helping me out a bit.
That's Tom Waits style.
Yeah. So yeah, music wasn't the thing I was going to do for a living or anything like that. But you know, one thing I often say is everyone knows what they do. Very few know why they do it. And for me, well, I'll give you examples of that. I say this often when we perform. I ask students, if I meet young people, you know, I'll ask them if they know who Steve Fonyo is, and nobody knows, but ask them who Terry Fox is, and every student knows who Terry Fox is. Yeah. One of those 2 guys lost his leg in a fight with cancer, and he ran across the country, Canada, on one leg. Everyone thinks that was Terry Fox,
right?
But it wasn't.
No,
it was Steve Fonyo made it from coast to coast. Terry Fox didn't. But a lot of people question Steve's why, because some criminal stuff, and the charity was doing
my friend, I did a shout out. There's a great documentary on Steve Fonyo that Alan Zweig is responsible for, and I mentioned Alan Zweig because I got confirmation yesterday that Alan Zweig will be at my event, which is Saturday at Palma's Kitchen. So that's TMLX 17 at noon. We'll get back to that, but it's such a small world story. And yes, you're absolutely 100% right. Steve Fonyo wasn't marketing friendly, I want to say.
Right.
Like he wasn't PR friendly.
Yeah, so, and that's the thing. So every school has a picture of Terry Fox on the wall, right? Because his why was pure. People don't question things, and he's a hero. So for me, it was my why. It wasn't about what. So for me, you know, at 17, you'd think you're, you know, invincible. And my friend just got his license and living out in the country and flying down these icy roads, going way too fast. And we pulled out to pass one last car, and before getting back to school, and we got hit by a semi-truck. And the next while of my story is a story that I've been told because I don't remember getting hit by a semi-truck.
So so when you're 17 years old and you're in that car, so you're not driving the car, you're a passenger in this car.
Yeah.
And this semi hits the car. You have no, like right now, you have no recollection of that crash.
No, and I've learned a lot about the brain. So you have your temporary memory and your long-term memory, right? Short-term and long-term. So this conversation that we're having right now is currently in our short-term memory. If you got hit on the head really hard tonight, you wouldn't remember today or yesterday. So it takes a couple days for things to get stored into your long-term memory. So I don't remember getting hit by a semi or that day or the day before. So my last memory is a few days before I'm sitting in class, right? So yeah, I've learned a lot about the brain, but
what's your first memory post-crash?
Well, it's kind of blurry, but I'm missing about, a month and a half, 2 months.
Wow.
Yeah. So, but you kind of get told your story. So, there's parts of my story that I've heard from my siblings and parents. So they got the call and they said, "We're sorry your son was in a bad accident. You should come to the hospital," which was a few hours away. So my family's coming not knowing what to expect. And, they get there and they said, well, he had passed, but he was resuscitated, and we'll put his head back together with titanium because I'd crushed the left side of my skull. And so they're like, yeah, so I'm going to that surgery. And that was the beginning of many surgeries. And they said I'd never wake up from my coma. And as you can all tell, you can hear my voice. I woke up one day.
I was going to say, spoiler alert, you survived that crash.
Yeah. But when I woke up, I didn't know who I was or my parents. They would tell me, I'll be like, there was all of that. And they were going, I'm like, what happened? And they'd say, do you know why you're in the hospital? I had no idea.
Wow.
So they would tell me, like, you were in an accident, you were hit by a semi. And then I'd fall unconscious and wake up an hour later and ask all over again what happened, And so so they would say, like, I would be angry because friends weren't coming to visit me, but they had visited me the day before, like it was just 51st dates all over all the time, right?
So yeah, like you're like a goldfish, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So your head, I'm looking at that beautiful skull of yours. So you got a plate in there? Okay. Oh, I see a scar now.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
So you're going off every time you go through like a metal detector. Do you go off?
I'm okay, depending. If they use the wand, I'm in trouble.
Okay.
But I just had it rebuilt just a few years ago because I found out that the day of the accident, I got my file a little while ago, and because I was having a lot of issues with my skull and a lot of pain, and I found out that they actually had students help rebuild it because they didn't think I'd wake up, and I found out part of my skull was dropped on the ground during the surgery.
Oh my God! So basically, they said this guy's done. So practice. You students can practice on it. It's almost like a cadaver or whatever.
Well, you got to do it first time I get it. Yes, but so I just had it rebuilt at the Mayo Clinic a few years ago.
Okay.
They opened it up, and I could show you pictures if you want, but there was practice screws. Like the first time you go into drywall, like, so they were checking how hard to push, but the metal was loose. They had left a hole right through to my brain that they never covered, so they rebuilt it, and so I won't show you.
Well, you never consider, so you never consider that maybe they didn't do the best job and you need it redone or whatever.
Right.
It's like you had your uncle built the bathroom in your basement or something, and then maybe you get your buddy Murray comes by and says, okay, who did this? Because this is not to code.
Yeah. Is it all Murrays are just good fix-up guys or what?
No, I'm thinking of my buddy Murray, my good friend Murray, who I saw at the Bruce Springsteen concert a couple of weeks ago. The best plumber in town. Shout out to Murray. He's a good guy. But he's a good guy. Whenever I have a sports, like Bruce Dobigan was just here. He wrote a hockey book, and I always get a note from Murray that, like, if I don't catch him at an Indigo's, can you get me an autographed copy of his book? Murray just loves the sports guys, and he's saying he's been begging me to get Corey Hart in the basement, which I'm still working on. I have hope because I think I can get Corey Hart in the basement, but Murray's gonna be like, I think I'm gonna have to sit him right there for the Corey Hart episode. Yeah. But Rob, so you survived, but it was touch and go, right? Like this, like you said, they didn't think you'd make it.
Yeah. So things happen, and later on, all of a sudden, I was able to meet the first responder. All of a sudden I find that my friend of mine calls, he goes, I think I just met the guy that resuscitated you.
Wow.
And so I sat down with this guy, and then you hear another piece of your story. And he says a week before the accident, he just had a prompting in his heart to take a first responders course. So he took this first responders course. Wow. And then he was driving home from work one day, and he heard this big crash, and he pulls up, and so I'm sitting talking with him, and he goes, dude, like, I ran up to you, and you had no pulse and you weren't breathing. And I was like, so now I'm being told another piece of the story.
Right.
And he said that like you could be cut wide open, but if your heart's not beating, you're not bleeding because your blood's not pumping. So you wouldn't notice, you don't bleed out. Right.
Right.
But he says, I resuscitated you, and I realized your heart started beating again when all of a sudden blood started pouring out of your head.
Wow.
And his wife was telling me that he had tried to hold my skull together so I wouldn't bleed out before the ambulance got there, and said he couldn't like move his arms for days because he had been using every muscle trying to prevent me from bleeding.
Oh my God.
out. Yeah.
Well, that guy saved your life.
Totally. Yeah.
And he just took that first responder course. How long before this accident
he
came
said
across?
like just recently, like a week before or so. And then it'd get this. So he was telling me they would phone the hospital like every day forever saying, can somebody just tell me if that kid made it? Like, but with privacy laws, sorry, we can't tell anything. Yeah. So for years, he didn't know if I made it. And so when we sat down, what an emotional conversation we had, right?
I'm feeling secondhand, I'm getting the goosebumps right now.
Yeah.
Like, and this is a PSA. Take a first responder course because you're like, oh, I've never needed one yet. Well, maybe next week you're going to come across a 17-year-old kid and you're going to hold his brain together while the ambulance comes.
That was massive, And then here I am. Finally, I get sent home and all this stuff, and I'm in recovery. And again, you go from a 6'5" guy playing sports to a guy getting bathed by his mom. Oh, yeah. And what's your identity? And that's when I went through this really dark time, especially after high school, where I'm like, who am I? What do I do? Had all these injuries. I was in so much pain, and the painkillers. Like, there's so many directions
do they
I
stick
could
you
take
on
with
what?
this.
They stick. Well, that's just it. The doc is going to have all the details in it, and people should see the documentary. But as we run through the story, is it like they put you on Percocets? Like, what do they stick
Let's start
in?
with T3,
Okay.
for the pain, but
T3.
there was this for this nerve damage, this to fall asleep, but you start with T3 and then you get to Percocet, and my doctor wanted to help me, but you become tolerant and they keep upping your doses till I was at 240 Percocet a month and 180 Oxy Neo, and one Oxy Neo is the same strength as 4 Percocet. So, and I could be sitting here talking to you like this because you become tolerant, right?
Right.
So I'm just, then you're dealing with that side of things. But nobody knew, my friends, my family, no one knew that I didn't want to be. Everybody was asking, like, how's your skull, not how's your mind?
That's a great point. And they see that you lived and they see that you're a miracle, right? That's a miraculous recovery. Robb Nash, God tapped you on the shoulder and spared you, and here you are. What a miracle. Walking miracle.
Yeah, absolutely. And here I am just trying to figure out what's next for my life. But man, I went to this dark place, and people throw cliches at you trying to comfort you, right? Some say it was fate, right? And you're talking God, the version of that I got from my family. You know, I had somebody come up and say, well, you better figure out what you're doing wrong because God is mad, so he spanked you with the semi, right? I'm like,
oh my gosh,
okay,
can you imagine?
so now my anger is directed at God, right? And all these things. But the most common thing people would say is everything happens for a reason.
Right.
And people say that with such great intentions. But since my accident, I met with tons of people in prison and hospitals and funerals. And even though people mean well when they say that, that statement does way more damage than good. Because now I had to figure, okay, why did I get hit by a semi? Is it because I'm a bad kid or what? Like, so that just made me spiral. I do not want to be alive. I was suicidal for 2 years. And then somebody came up to me, said the most amazing thing, and it changed me.
Okay, so you're telling me you considered taking your own life?
Yeah.
Like, and again, was it ideation? Like, was there ever a plan in place? Like, I'm just wondering how dark it got for you.
I wouldn't say a plan. It was just this constant laying down at night going, why stay? You know, what a lot of people don't know about mental health, you know, when they talk about it, like, well, it's selfish because you take your pain and you give it to the world around you. But the lie in your head is that the most selfless thing you could do is leave. Like, you are a burden to your parents, you're a burden to your family, you're a burden to your friend. The world would be better without you. That's the lie in your head, especially when you just put your family through this and you think you're this burden, right? So I'm like, I don't want to be alive. So it was constant that I was thinking this way. None of my friends would even believe it because you become the life of the party. That's who I was. I'm like,
right.
Oh, I wasn't affected by anything. But then this guy comes up and he says, you're trying to figure out the reason you were hit by a semi, right? And I was like, yeah. He goes, I think I know the reason. And I was like, what is it? He goes, you got hit by a semi because you and your friends were going too fast on an icy road. Shit happens. What are you going to do with it? And that sounds simple, but it set me free. I don't have to be mad at fate or God or, and we get to make decisions, and sometimes those decisions will have consequences. But that set me free. So I'm like, holy crap. And then all of a sudden I don't know why I got a second chance. I had done nothing to deserve it, but now maybe I should do something with it. Because, we've all lost friends and family, why did I get a second chance? I don't know, but I should do something with this. What could I do? And I remember I screamed at the sky, dude. I was like, what do you want from me? I'll do anything. Any prompting I feel, I will do. And I thought I'd hear a voice telling me to move to Africa and build a well, and right. I would have done it, whatever I felt.
Right.
But clear as day, I heard or felt, you just feel there's something you're supposed to do. Take a first responders course, right? And what I just knew I was supposed to do was find the semi driver that hit me and tell him I was alive. And I was like, whoa. And it was pretty funny because I'd phoned the police. Like, I didn't know where to start. So I'm like, yo, can I get the phone number of the semi driver that ran me over? And the cops are like, no. I'm like, all right. But this conviction wouldn't leave me. And finally,
well, they're afraid you're going to kill the guy.
Well, yeah, totally. Like, but I talked to this finally one cop. I'm like saying to him, like, I think this guy needs to know I'm okay. So he goes, all right. He goes, you didn't get it from me, but here's his number. And I call this trucker from the U.S., answers the phone, and I was like, hey, is this so-and-so? And he got real quiet. He goes, yeah. I said, just felt that I should call you, tell you I'm alive. I made it, and he started crying. And he said, I'm sorry about your friend. And I said, what friend? He goes, the guy that died and crushed his skull. And I was like, no, that's me. Same thing, he didn't know, right? So but the cool part of that story isn't what happened to him. Like, I think it helped him and set him free, but it was what happened to me. I hung up the phone and I was like, whoa, that felt good. And I didn't have to move to another country. I had to make a phone call. But that was the first time where, you know, I said before, like, you have this lie in your head that says you're a burden and your life doesn't matter. Now all of a sudden it felt like my life mattered to somebody other than me. And that felt good. And I wanted more of that. So I was like, how could I tell there's got to be other people like me having those dark thoughts. Nobody talked to me about it. Maybe I should tell my story. And I was like, what's a good way to tell a story? And I thought music would be great. And that was my long version of telling you that's my why. It's not what I do, play music. It's my why, to tell a story.
Hey, goodbye, I guess I messed up again. Thought I'd change, but still I'm the way I am. No, I'll always be the same, and I accept the blame for the sorry state that I'm in. Hey, goodbye, there's no use in trying, 'cause if I stay, there's no end to the crying. She deserves way more, so I'm walking out the door. For once, I'll be kind, and I'll make up her mind. She's so sick of me begging forgiveness, 'cause you and I, we both know I did this. I'm jaded, I'm hated, you're the only friend of mine. Please still meet you, hello, goodbye.
Hello, goodbye, Rob. Who am I listening to here?
That would be my band and me trying to sing over top of them. Not bad though, hey?
You know, it fits right in with Nickelback, Default. Like, this fits right in there. This sounds amazing in the headphones.
Thank you. I wish I could tell you that we sounded that polished in the beginning. The first time we did
I skip some steps here? Okay, so what was the name of your band?
It was called Live on Arrival.
Live on Arrival. And again, I want to hear about Live on Arrival, and I want to hear about the record deal and everything that happened there. But this has got to be a radio hit in this country, right?
Yeah, it did. It got to number 3 on the charts, radio charts, I believe. Yeah. And it's a song I wrote about a homeless guy that I met on tour. It was a day I was just like, during the day I went to a soup kitchen and this guy told me his story and I was like, oh, that's incredible. I'm like, I should write a song about this guy's story.
All right, give me the Live on Arrival tale here. I mean, again, we're hearing it in the headphones and it would sound, what is it, City? What's the name of the big new rock station in Winnipeg? City?
92 cities there, Power 97.
Okay.
Yeah.
But they would play this and just give us a taste of the rise and then what happens with Live on Arrival.
Well, it started off, we were a band and, you know, we started writing songs. We did our first show and man, we wanted to change the world. And we did the first show and there was 4 people in the audience and I was like, wait, where's the crowd? I want to change the world.
Listen, I'm going to be moderating a panel discussion on Sunday with Gary Top, his name is, and he was bringing bands to Toronto, and one of the bands he brought to Toronto was The Police because he liked their drummer from another band, and they had, I think, approximately, depending who you listen to, 9 to 15 people at their gig at the Horseshoe. Okay, right. So the Police had 9 to 15 people. Continue.
Yeah, well, to be honest with you, I'm glad there was. Now that I listened to our first album, I'm okay with there was only 4 or 10 people there because we weren't great yet, but we got a little better. We did 3 independent albums before getting signed, and we got better over time. That's for sure. But man. I also got to see what it took to get a song in the top 10 in Canada, and there's a lot of politics involved, a lot of money exchanged. Is
there payola in this country?
Not pay. Well, no, not
different. It's got a different form now.
Yeah, but you saw a part of it in the documentary where there's they throw certain parties and they, I guess I should be careful with that. And
Well, don't be too
nowadays-
careful. This is Toronto.
No,
Mike.
I just meant, I don't mean to say it sound like a Diddy party or anything like
Oh,
that.
no,
That's what
no,
I meant.
no. I didn't even think that.
But it's like all of a sudden you have a big launch party and
Right.
they fly out all the radio stations for this party, and they got Loverboy to open for us at this so that we look like we're somehow bigger than Loverboy. I don't know
Right.
what but it takes a lot of the right people to pull off getting a song. It has to be a good song, but still, like I feel
It's not enough just to have a good
No,
song. There's politics around it, and
it
what the
is.
label and the record.
For
Is
sure.
there some, I don't know, some contra deal? Who knows?
Well, that's the thing is that what upsets me most about that is so many young artists walk up and they show me their music and they have, hey, how do you get a song on the radio? And it's just like you hear some of these bands and songs, and there's just so many great artists and so many great songs that'll never be heard. And it's a shame because, it takes a lot to get a song on the radio. And the brief piece of it that you saw in the documentary was, they flew out all these radio guys out to Vancouver, and there's this big party. And they said, okay, we're going to introduce you, Rob. And you walk out on stage, and all those radio guys are there, and you just give them a wave and come backstage. I'm like, sure. It's like, here he is, the man who came back from the dead, lead singer of Live on Arrival, Robb Nash. And I walk out, and they had all these sexy nurses dancing around me. And I was like, and I didn't even know what was happening at first. I'm like, what?
Right.
And then I realized they were using my accent as a gimmick, and I was livid.
Right.
But it was part of the game, So
It's all in the game. But you did get a record deal.
did get a record deal, yeah, and it launched But I was fighting to write songs about stuff that that mattered to me. That song you just played, "Hello Goodbye," like you're sitting with all the best producers, and these co-writers are going to help you make hits. And that was the first one they sat down. And they said, like, "What do you want to write a song about?" And I said, "Well, I want to write about this homeless guy I met at a soup kitchen." And so I wrote the song you just played. And that night, the labels drive me to my hotel, and they're like, "Hey, that's cool that you got that off your chest, Rob. A song about a homeless dude, but nobody on the radio wants to hear about homeless people. We need you to write hits, But as you saw, that we launched the album, and that's the song that broke. So
Yeah.
it was quite something. And the guy's story. And if you watch the music video, "Hello Goodbye," you'll see his story of what happened to him. And by the way, we did a show for a bunch of the addictions foundations in Alberta a little while ago. This guy walks up and he goes, "Dude, I was in jail for 11 years. And that song, Hello Goodbye, that was my jam. That really helped me get through all my stuff." I'm like, "Oh, good for you." And he goes, "Now I'm out of jail." He goes, "I want to do something special with my life." I'm like, "Good for you." I'm like, "What are you going to do?" He goes, "I'm going to make music videos." I'm like, "Oh, cool, man." He goes, "Yeah, can I make a video for you?" And I was thinking, well, you've been in jail for 11 years. I don't know how good you're going to be at making videos, but he showed me some videos he had made on his phone, and he does all my music videos,
Really?
including that one for Hello Goodbye. We had a video, and he was so good that he if you go look at any of my music videos, his name is Frenzy, and he made the video for the song that inspired him.
Well, listen, I have more of your music coming up in this chat here, so I wanted to get the Live on Arrival hit, if you will, and I do need some closure. So Live on Arrival was Dead on Arrival, right? Like it's
Yeah, that's why we chose the name. Yeah.
but you walk away from this record deal. Am I right?
Yeah. So we had a few songs in the top 10, and there was actually a key day. We were playing with Finger 11 in Edmonton.
Shout out to Burlington.
Yeah. And and there at the time their song Paralyzed was number 1 in the US for 7 weeks.
Big jam.
And they were, man, I remember them when they were the Rainbow Butt Monkeys.
So do I, bud.
Right? So, and you could see how long they had fought and everything like that. And, now their song was number 1 in the US. I'm like, dang, like how long have they been fighting? And they were still grinding, And I was like, dude, how long is it going to take for us to, if possible, because we had just scratched the surface of the music industry. And I was like, man, are they even realizing they made it? They're number 1 in the US, right? And we opened for them, and I remember looking in the crowd, and you could just tell when there's 4 guys standing there that are a band watching you. And I saw these 4 guys looking up at me. We were opening for Finger 11, and I could see they were looking at me going, dude, you made it. And I'm looking at Finger 11 going, dude, you made it.
Yeah.
And so like it's if you're not careful, right? But it was after that show. Now we were looking at going to the U.S. to do a showcase there, and labels like, yeah, we're ready to bring you there and do the nurse party in the U.S. And then I was offered a 9-month tour, just going to schools and telling my story. And I was thinking, man, well, I love crowd surfing. I love playing at big crowds, but man, this would actually now be part of that why that I talked about before, telling my story. And
that's kind of a remark, but listening to that story, and again, I've seen the doc, so there hasn't been any, not to spoil anything, but the fact that you made that decision that you'd rather talk to, high schools, like kids in schools, and share your story and essentially save lives that route rather than become Chad Kroger or whatever.
Yeah, well, it was the best decision I made. There's Hollywood teaches us to chase success, and but there's a great book called From Success to Significance, and that's when you take your success and do something with it to impact the world. And consider us success. Sure, we had some songs on the radio. Most of your people listening won't even remember that because it was for a very small portion. We had scratched the surface, but it was success. I don't want to downplay it. A lot of bands would love.
You got on the radio, my friend.
Yeah.
That's most bands with great music just can only dream of getting their songs spun on.
Totally. Yeah. So I'm grateful for that, and it was a bit of a platform. And then I offered this 9-month tour and walked from my record deal to do it, and everyone thought I was crazy. And it was 9 months. Wasn't sure what to do. It was no pay to do the tour. I owed money, right? Because you know how record industry works, right?
It's just this is, as I've talked to many, I'm a big 90s alt-rock CanCon guy, so I have them down here, and I find out, well, it's essentially a loan. Dude, like, they're going to front you the money, and then it's like you go to these you see them at parties, get the drinks for the table, this, that, and whatever, and it's like, oh, that's all being billed back to you.
Exactly.
Like, they're not paying for that. You're paying for that.
Yeah. It's
the game's rigged.
Well, yeah. Well, I think my biggest, opening for Finger 11 there. Hey, we get that first chance to go to Edmonton and play for them, and you're thinking, what are you going to get paid to play for 10,000 people or whatever it was? And there's 5 band members, and there's your flights or bus or hotel,
and you're the opening band.
And you're the opening band, and you're thinking, what do you get paid for that?
You're like, you're here for the exposure. Like, these Finger 11 fans are going to hear your band.
I think we got $375 for that show, and it's still politics. We were with the same booking agent label and all, and we had songs on the radio. So you still have to qualify, but that show was costing you a ton of money. But you do it because you're trying to win over its exposure. You're winning over fans and stuff. But that first time I went into a school, and I was just like sitting with me and my acoustic and telling a story and playing a song, and I was like, holy cow. And it was different. I hated presentations when I was in school, but I was like, man, maybe I could do something cool with this. And before getting the record deal, I was a radio DJ, so I was a storyteller, and I do lots of impersonations. So
you got those pipes.
I got pipes, but I also I'm sitting in a class, and I remember presentations of the don't do drugs presentations in schools, but for me, I'd kick off doing all the Family Guy impressions, and so it's like making it humorous and still talking. But I never, when I started that, the 9 months, and then after 9 months, other schools started calling, and then reservations, and then youth detention centers and prisons, and all of a sudden I brought a guitarist back, so it was now 2 acoustics and then a drummer, and it was growing. All the while, I never talked about the fact that I was suicidal. My whole thing was just, hey, I had this accident. Make every day count, because you never know what could happen tomorrow. I had never told my family or my band that I had been suicidal. Like, I'm not going to say that to people. What would my band think of me? What would the students think of me? What would the staff think of me if I revealed this weakness,
So you saw it as a weakness.
Yeah, well, suck it up, be a man, right?
Suck it up, buttercup.
Yeah. So I was just like, make every day count, and try to keep it really just a heartfelt message, And then one day, got called to a school here in Ontario, and they said, we heard you're really effective. Can you come right away? They said, we lost a student. They took their life. And on this kid's note, it revealed that they had a pact with a friend. Like, if you kill yourself, I'll kill myself. Suicide pact. And the principal says, we don't know who it is. We got 1,000 students here. Can you come right away? What do you do in a moment like that? you say, well, our flights are this, our hotels are, and it's like, yeah, we'll be right there. So we go there, and now there's 1,000 students sitting in front of me, and I'm supposed to try to find this kid from stage somehow, right? And I knew I had to say it for the first time, and my heart was just racing, bro. I'm like, I gotta say it. Oh man, this is the end of the tour, you know. But I knew I had to, and you know, I get to this point of the show, and I was like, I know somebody in this audience is thinking about taking their life. I was like, you're not alone. I was there once too, and I just like braced for impact, but it was like 10,000 pounds off me. I was like, holy cow. That felt good. And then afterwards, I'm having conversations, and yeah, some are still asking for an autograph or a picture, but man, this vulnerability felt so good, and people really started opening up. And then this girl walked up, and she pulled a note out of her pocket, and it's an old note, wrinkled, and she hands it to me with a smile on her face. And I legit thought she wanted me to sign this paper, and I was like, what's this? She goes, it's my suicide note. I was going to kill myself this weekend. I was like, holy. And the principal and the counselor were standing next to me, and they walked off, and she went to get the help that she needed. I was like, what just happened? She had the note on her, and I was like, she didn't write that during the show. And then I talked with some police that, you know, they do a lot of teen prevention or suicide prevention among teens. And they said, yeah, very rarely is the note freshly written. People carry it with them for months, waiting for somebody to push them over the edge, or for somebody to reach out and say, you know, you're not alone. Say something that lets them feel like they're not that burden I was talking about. So then it was the next day, there's another 1,000 students in front of me, and I was like, well, if the stats are true, like pre-COVID, 1 in 5 teenagers had seriously considered suicide in the last 12 months. 1 in 5.
And that's pre-COVID.
Pre-COVID. So I was like, what if I said it again? So the next show, I was like, I know someone in this room is thinking about taking their life. You know, you're not alone. And it was way easier the second time, by the way. And then a young man gave me his note, and I was like, oh, this is now my focus. This is what I do. Yeah.
These students are giving you their suicide note because they don't need them anymore.
Yeah.
I got chills, man.
I got a bunch of them on me right here. I carry them with me. This is how I write songs, bro. That's not one of them.
Oh my God.
But yeah. And almost every one of them starts with the words, hey, mom, dad, if you're reading this, you know.
And my friend, if you're reading this, that's the name of the documentary.
Yeah.
I'm just processing that.
Yeah,
These students are handing you, they've written these notes, and they plan to take their own life.
Yeah.
And then they hear you, and you relate to them because you tell your story.
Yeah. And I can't tell you how many times they didn't have their note with them. So when they get home, they make a video on TikTok, on YouTube, on Instagram of ripping up their note, and they would just tag us in the video. So now when we play our shows, there's a song called Thief of Colors. And I wrote this song after I went to my first Narcotics Anonymous meeting, where they teach you, don't try to make it through a month or a week or a year. Just say, just for today, I've got this. And while we play that song at shows, on the LED walls behind us, because now we do bigger shows when we bring like 10 schools together, but on the walls behind us, you see the lyrics being written, you see the music video, and you see just a compilation of all these kids that have made videos of ripping up their notes. And then these kids look at the videos and go like, I want to be like that girl. I want to rip up my note. And that's what we try to do is we try to show, look, not every story of addiction ends in an overdose. Not every story of mental health ends in a suicide. We need to balance the stories and show victories.
Okay, man. Rob, I'm going to play another song I want to ask you about.
never saw myself divided, but here I am, standing shattered all alone. You left me picking up the pieces, but I don't know how to do this on my own. You never heard me crying, and so I scream. All the words I crave, I never heard you say. That's sitting to myself. Time and again I tried to walk with you by my side, but you just drag me down. 'Cause you never heard me crying, and so I scream. This is your troubled child.
Troubled Child.
You never wanted me.
You mentioned that you were reaching out to Indigenous communities. Could you just maybe revisit that for a moment and tell me about that experience?
Yeah, well, first time we got called to a reserve, like we walked in and it was some tension in the air. Not gonna lie, because it's like, okay, white boy. Like at that point, no one on our team was Indigenous. My current bass player, she's incredible. But the first time we got called in, it was like, all right, what's the catch? You know, what'd you get paid to come here? Not just the elders, the chiefs, but the students are like, why are you here? You want to take a picture? Look what we did on this reserve. Because young people can smell bullshit a mile away, right? And obviously there's
Photo op for Robb Nash.
yeah, but they saw no cameras, and man, they saw that we were genuine, and we started doing a lot of work, and we got to a place where you know, if you're Indigenous, you get to a certain amount of, you know, respect from the elders and the chiefs. They'll have a ceremony and give you your spirit name. It's always different animals, and they have different meanings. If you get called the bear, that means you're the protector and the healer. You'll probably be chief when you grow up. And some of the chiefs had a ceremony. They said, we've failed protecting our youth, and you're helping us do that. And so they gave me my spirit name. They call me the Bear Chief, the chief of the bears. And yeah, they don't call me Robb Nash, they call me Bear Chief. And it was, once they saw it was genuine. And what I love about working with Indigenous people more than anything is, in the West, we will talk about mental health a little bit. We'll talk about physical health. We'll talk about emotional health, but we won't touch on spiritual health. But the Indigenous people, a drumbeat is spiritual. So that's wide open. And, you know, when I write my songs, I write the songs about the people that I've met. You know, that's what I do. And so I've written songs about these people. I've written songs about what they've. There's only so much I'm going to tell my story. And there's a kid right now, you'll see him in the documentary, that we met on a reserve in northern Saskatchewan. You know, met him. He didn't have a suicide note. He had a book. He had written 100 pages of things that he hated about himself and what his parents should do with his things after he took his life. And met with him. He was 15. I was like, dude, are you glad I'm still here? And he goes, yeah. I'm like, somebody will say the same thing to you one day. I said, you got to keep going. Somebody needs your story. And this is, I'll sum up something real quick for you, but this is what happens all the time, including recently at the airport here. This girl comes up, or this Indigenous kid, and he's like, I just looked at him like, so let me guess. You're like me. You hurt deeply, but you love deeply, don't you? And he was like, yeah. I'm like, you hurt deeply, but you can see when others are hurting? And he goes, yeah. I'm like, yeah, you have what I have, and it sucks sometimes, but you can help a lot of people with that. Isn't it interesting? I said that you and I get diagnosed with depression, which is very real, but nobody gets diagnosed with empathy. Like, there's something beautiful about your emotions. Don't shut them off. Learn how to channel them. And like, this just happened at the airport to this girl too. I was diagnosed with depression. I have suicidal thoughts. I was like, so do you dance? Do you sing? Do you paint? And she's like, I'm a dancer. How'd you know? There is a weird, after talking with hundreds of thousands of teenagers, there's a connection between the arts and mental illness. I'm convinced. That's why we lose so many people, like Kurt, Chris Cornell, Chester, Robin Williams. You think about, growing up, my friends would go through a tough day. They could wipe it off, keep walking. I couldn't. I would get to my room, bawl my eyes out, and I thought I was cursed with extra emotion. Why do I hurt so deeply? Why do I feel so deeply? Until I realized I was a songwriter. That extra emotion that I had in me was meant to be channeled into a song. Even if it's dark, get it out. right? And what we live in it, like, take this and shut it off. And I'm not always against medication, but it's like there's this weird connection between the arts and mental illness. It's I think, and the reason I'm so passionate is I think we're losing some of the most gifted people.
As a young man, somebody in my life was diagnosed with bipolar disorder, and I read a book which essentially as echoes what you said there, which drew a correlation between bipolar disorder and creative output and brilliance, and absolutely a correlation.
You see this right here? I'm wearing a old school pocket watch.
Yeah.
Guy came up to me after a show and he says, I'm bipolar. I'm like, okay. He goes, I've got Asperger's syndrome, like autism. I was like, okay. He goes, I was addicted to crack and cocaine. You're telling me I'm not cursed, that I'm gifted? I'm like, bipolar. I'm summing up a long conversation, but you experience the highs and lows of emotion, which you could. I said, autism, when you focus on something, you're super focused. I said, and you're an addict. Addicts, we think we're cursed because we can't stop. That's not a curse. That's a gift too. I'm an all-in person. I don't do anything half-assed. When I started a band, I was all in. I was committed. I was dedicated. And guess what? When I got a hold of drugs, I was all in. I was dedicated. So when I was talking about doing the shows for the Addictions Foundations, I'm not here because I feel sorry for you guys. You're just all-in people. Point that at the wrong thing, it'll destroy you. Point at the right thing, you'll excel at whatever you want. Like the guy that makes my music videos. And you see these addicts go like, you're right. I'm an all-in person. Yeah. We're not quit. Like, we just go all in, right? So it's all these things. So this kid in the documentary, the Indigenous kid, I'm like, learn how to channel it. I'm like, do you like music, painting, dancing, poetry? And he goes, I love music. What would you play if you could play an instrument? He goes, guitar. And he learned how to play guitar with 5 fingers and an elbow, as you saw in the documentary. And now he's on tour with us playing guitar.
You know, this message is really resonating on the live stream, live.torontomike.com. I just popped in. Goosebumps during your stories, chills. J-Ho says, damn, incredible. Canada Kev says something. I'm going to say this to you now, Rob. The world needs more Robb Nashes. Like, what you're giving back, what you're doing, talking with these kids. So give me a sense of like would you travel across the country speaking to high school kids? And is it just high school kids? Do you ever go lower?
Yeah, we focus now lower. When we started this tour, which is over 12 years now, what the grade 12s were doing and struggling with is what the grade 8s are going through and struggling with. When grade 8s is now grade 5s. Recently we got called to 2 communities. One lost an 8-year-old, one lost a 7-year-old. You should be playing with Lego at that age.
Look, I live with an 8-year-old, okay?
Yeah.
Just breaks my heart.
How is that an option at 8 years old, right? So we just did 3 shows at the Bell Center in Surrey, and our charity, we bus in all the kids. We pay for the school buses if they need. We do everything through our charity and stuff. But before you wander too far away from the song you just played, Trouble Child.
Oh, yes. Yes.
For anyone that's in the industry, and somebody just said there's got to be more people like you, Rob.
Yeah.
I want to explain Trouble Child because not everybody has to do what I do. Okay. But I went to speak at an alternative school. There's 20, 25 kids and 5 staff. So if you don't know what an alternative school, it's often those that feel like they're outcasts. That's how they describe it, right? They're kept off campus. I was called to speak at one, so I went there, and I told them my story, and then they shared their stories with me, and they all, within their stories they wrote out, they all said, my whole life I've been called a trouble child. And it was just, I could just hear a song forming in my head. So I said, what if I came back in a few weeks and we wrote a song together? They're like, seriously? So I came back 11 days later, but I was thinking, I got home, and when I write out a vision, okay, if I write it out, I'm like, I look at it, I'm like, can I pull this off? And I say, yes, I can do this. Then I rip up that paper, throw it out, and start over until I write out a vision where I know there is no way I could pull this off on my own. This is going to take something supernatural and a whole community to pull this off. So I picture this. 11 days later, I came back. I knew not all the kids would want to write a song with me, but I said, who wants to write the words with me? 4 of them raised their hands because they loved writing poetry. Cool. I said, who wants to learn drums? Who wants to learn guitar? Who wants to learn bass? Brought them to the Long McQuaid, and I called the Long McQuaid, and I said, this is what I'm doing with these kids. You want to help out and get them some instruments? And they're like, we're in. Wow. And then we got people lined up to teach them lessons, right? I'm like, cool. But some of them are sitting back going, I'm not into music. I said, how about we make an album? I said, any of you kids ever want to be the model on the front cover of an album? And this girl's like, oh, she raised her hand. She had never worn makeup, never worn a dress, But she said, I've always wanted to be a model. I'm like, cool. I said, who wants to learn how to do her hair and makeup for the photo shoot? This is all stuff that you do when you make an album, right?
Right.
So I brought them all to the hair and makeup college in their city. The hair and makeup college that they're like, we're in. We'd love to help these kids. So all the girls got makeovers. 5 of them got to learn hair and makeup college for 5 days. The college offered one of them a $20,000 college scholarship to go there for college. We showed them the radio broadcasting college. One of them got a $15,000 scholarship to go there, showing them all the different parts of the thing. Some of them are sitting back. They're not included yet. I said, who's interested in photography? So we brought in photographers to show them how to do the photos and of the whole process of making the album, learning drums, guitar, and all that, and the makeovers, right? And our model on the front cover. And there was just a few kids left that weren't included in the process. And I was like, who likes working with their filters on their pictures on TikTok, on Instagram, and all that? They raised their hands. So we brought them to the company that designs our album covers. They designed the album cover. So they were all a part of this process of making an album. So you said there's got to be more people like me. To the one kid, they were inspired by the photographer. They weren't inspired by me. It took a community of people gathering around them to write this song. And then at the end of the year, we had a party with them at the end of the year. And they're like, dude, we want to hear our song. We want to hear it finished. I'm like, you want to hear it? So we flipped on the radio and we had it all timed out. Like, this is the new song by Robb Nash. He wrote this with the students at this alternative school. And they're like, oh, our song's on the radio. And by the way, our producers that we had when we had our big record deal, I happened to do a show in Vancouver, not far from that theater. I popped in, told them what I'm doing now, and they are now on my team. They produce all my stuff free of charge because they're in. We love it. One plays guitar with me on stage. The other one does my live mixing front of house. They're like, because they're tired of the industry just being the same old, same old. They want to be a part of something that's not just successful but significant.
You're significant. You're doing important work here, Rob. I mean, I hope you take a moment, to step back and just realize you're making a difference here. Like, you inspired the heck out of me. I said to Jeff, I said, I guess we're going to have to Zoom with this guy from Winnipeg or whatever. But then I found out we had a little window, and I literally ask Jeff. I moved people out of the calendar. I cleared the calendar. I said, I want Robb Nash in the basement. I want this story in person. Nothing beats in person. So I hope you're doing important work here. Well,
you are too, and you're allowing people to share their stories. Stories are so important to this world. We can be inspired. And I've had the debates. I was on one interview where the guy said, he's like, well, Rob, it's kind of good that you were hit by that semi truck, isn't it? And I was like, no, it's not good to get hit by a semi. He goes, but look what you've done with it. I said, but the semi didn't make me do this. He goes, but if you could go back in time, you'd do it all over again, wouldn't you?
And you're like, maybe I wouldn't get hit by this semi.
No, I wouldn't.
The poor guy holding your brains intact.
Yeah. And he goes, well, you're young. One day you'll realize you had to go through this to think this way. And I was like, if you can convince me by the end of this interview that I had to get hit by a semi to think this way, I'll stop my tour. I'll sell my guitars. I'll get a semi license, and I'll start running people over.
There goes my next segment. I was going to try to convince you that that semi saved your life. That was going to be my next argument here.
We can learn from rock bottom, but we can learn from each other's stories, right?
And I want to ask, what I want to ask you about, Robbie, is the ink. Okay, so you're wearing you're wearing a jacket, but I can even see it leaking out. I can see the wrists, etc. There are names tattooed. What am I going to get? A show here? Okay.
Yeah. So let me start stripping for you.
Okay, I'm going to play the music, the burlesque music. Yeah.
Yeah. It started with, I started getting, like I said before, tagged in videos of people ripping up their notes and stuff like that. But the amount of young people that started tattooing the lyrics of our songs on their arms where they used to cut, that rocked me. That's a song that I wrote, and now it's on somebody's arm. Something that's such a part of my life is a part of theirs. And I'm like, how do I repay that? So yeah, if you go, follow me online or you watch the documentary tonight, I didn't know how to repay it, so I took all the names and all the signatures from the bottom of all the suicide notes and I tattooed them on my arms.
Wow.
I'm not doing any more. They are filled.
Your arms, no more space.
There's no more space, but
what about the legs?
I say it from stage that I'm not going to do anymore. I filled them up because I don't want anyone to give me a suicide note thinking I want my name on his arm.
Oh, right. I never thought of that.
So, but these, these are all the signatures and names of those kids, and they are some of the most talented people I've met, and a lot of them are on our team.
Well, now they're in your heart, but they're literally on your body for the rest of your life.
Yeah. And when COVID hit,
yeah,
and we couldn't do our shows, man, schools and communities were just begging for help. And I was like, we couldn't do our shows. We couldn't bring students together. So there's a film crew that I had worked with a little bit, and I asked them, hey, people need some stories of hope. So I asked if they would go around the country and find some of these kids. Where are they now? And that was the goal of the documentary. I did not want to be in the documentary. I wanted it. So they followed up in the documentary. You'll see they followed up with 6 of the people's names on my arms. Where are they now? Students that had handed me suicide notes. Where are they now? And there's some incredible stories. But the film crew was like, dude, your story is what ties them all together. So we have to tell your story as well. And you've seen it, bro. But, 2 days before, like, they recreated the accident scene where I had to walk up on an actor's resuscitating me. They had the same vehicle that I was in that day. Like, they recreated the scene in the same place. And 2 days before we shot that scene and did my interview, my dad passed away.
Oh,
and
sorry, man.
Yeah. And it was tough. And they were like, should we reschedule? I'm like, no, let's just do it. It brought something really raw out of me. But yeah, if you watch that documentary tonight or whenever you do, you'll see some incredible stories of these young people where they are now, and you will then know what I said before, that we are losing. These are all kids that thought they had nothing to offer this world, and they are rock stars.
Okay, so I'm going to actually play one more song, but I'm going to remind the listeners that this documentary is called If You're Reading This... ... And remember, the Robb Nash Project. Get 2 B's in Robb, okay? That's just how we're rolling here. This is launching today, which is November 26, 2024. And this documentary explores Robb Nash's remarkable journey from going from suicidal to significant. And the instructions from your fearless host here on Toronto Mike is that you're going to finish this conversation. You're going to watch the documentary when it launches tonight, if you're reading this. You're going to share this doc. You're going to share this awareness with someone who needs your help. And you're going to better understand the rising issue of suicide and mental health with today's youth in Canada. I got so many goose pimples when you showed me those suicide notes that these kids are handing you because they don't need the suicide note anymore. And then seeing your arms when you rolled up your sleeve, the names of all the children that you have saved. Robb Nash, you're inspiring the heck out of me. And there's a song. I'm going to play it for us on our way out here. Rob, tell me about this song, this new album, This Is War.
Yeah. You know, I've been given a few awards for the work that I do. I only accept them because it gives me a little more credibility for what I do. But I got one award, and the other 3 guys getting the same award were all wearing their army fatigues, missing limbs. And I was thinking, what am I doing here? I just play music. In fact, one of the guys turned to me and he looked at me, a soldier, and he goes, hello. I said, hi. And he goes, I'll have another glass of champagne, please. I was like, oh, he thinks I'm a server. And I just went and got him champagne. But then they introduced me and they said, the next guy's fighting a different kind of a war against an invisible enemy called mental illness. And right there, I was like, oh, there's a song. And it turned out to be a whole album, a new album we wrote, 18 songs. It's called This Is War. There's moments in the album where you're on the front lines. There's moments you're in triage. There's moments you're looking for an ally. There's moments you're feeling victorious. But the whole album is This Is War. And in this song, you'll hear me say, like, so this is freedom. This is the what we've created. Then why are we losing so many people? Like, we have lost, as we started off, comparing what we have in the West compared to my family in Belize. We have put our priorities in a long time, and we're in a war, and we are losing the war, and it's time to fight back.
Wow. My friend, let's shout out some of the services that have been supporting you in this endeavor. I was reading about Kids Help Phone.
Yeah, Kids Help Phone. You know, there's only so much we can do. We work closely with schools, CMHA, and Kids Help Phone is... kids can just text Nash to 686868, and it goes to Kids Help Phone, so we can partner together with them. And we are working on something massive right now together with it's called Integrated Youth Services. Our mental health system is so broken that together with our friends at Integrated Youth Services, we're working on this massive cause fund. We're thinking it might be called Operation Overcome, where we are tired of young people having to wait 6 months for an appointment with a psychologist, and they are building centers. We want to have basically walk-in clinics for mental health so that there will be one within 30 minutes of 95% of youth in Canada.
What should we be doing, Rob? This is a big question on the out here, but yes, we can watch your documentary. We can spread that message to those who need it, which is everybody, by the way. But what should we be doing? What more can we do as citizens of this country?
I'll tell you, I'll explain it through one very simple story. I think we make life way too complex. Every once in a while, you're going to get a nudge in your gut, something you're supposed to do that you don't know where it comes from. And I'm not going to tell you where it comes from. You can, whatever you think it's coming from. But every once in a while, you feel like you're supposed to do something. One guy feels like he's supposed to take a first responders course. For me, I felt I was supposed to phone a semi-driver. I'll tell you a quick story.
Yeah.
I'm not a counselor. I'm not a psychologist. I'm trying to be the bridge between the hurting and the help. But met some family friends. Their son had his 3rd attempt. And they said, would you meet with him when he gets out of the hospital? I said, sure. And I said, as long as you know I'm not a counselor. But we sat down, and this guy was like, if I want to cut myself, why do my parents care? They're my arms if I want to cut. If I want to get high, it's my brain. If I want to kill myself, it's my life. And I just looked at him and I said, yeah, but I think there's something special about you. And he goes, what do you mean? I said, are you ever sitting at a red light and somebody stands out to you and you don't know why, but you just notice them? And he goes, yeah, that happens all the time. I said, yeah, I think you have a gift. And I think if we open our eyes, we all have that gift. So I said, let's go for a walk. We went for a walk, and busy streets. And I said, so does anyone stand out to you in the crowds here? He goes, what do you mean? I'm like, did you notice anybody? He goes, actually, it's weird you're saying that, because when we got out here, I noticed that woman way over there across the street. I said, the old woman with the walker? He goes, yeah. As soon as we got out here, I noticed her. I'm like, okay, let's go find out why. So we walked across the street, and he's like, what are we doing? I'm like, let's go find out why you noticed her. So we walked up to her, and I said, hey, ma'am. I said, is there anything we can do for you right now? Immediately, she starts crying. She goes, are you serious? I said, yeah. She goes, I've been standing here for half hour. My shoes are untied, and I'm afraid to take another step because I might fall and break my other hip. I just prayed that somebody would come and tie my shoes for me.
Oh, man.
I tied one, he tied the other. And we got up. She was so grateful. It was like we bought her a house. And we walked away. And he was like, that was fucking awesome. I'm like, yeah, man. And you saw it. He goes, yeah, I did. I said, let me ask you this. Do you want to cut yourself right now? He goes, not really, no. I'm like, do you want to get high? no. I'm like, do you want to kill yourself? He goes, no. I'm like, why? Who are you focused on? He goes, her. I said, yeah. I said, those times when you're getting high, you want to kill yourself, you're cutting. Let me guess, you're at home alone in your room? And he goes, yeah. I said, man, it's those moments you feel cursed, but maybe there's something out there. You're supposed to notice somebody, and there's something keeping you in your room so that you don't go out there and change the world. He's like, holy. His parents called me a few weeks later, and they said, what the hell did you say to our son? I was like, why? Is everything okay? And they said every day before he goes to school, he'll go and shovel the neighbor's driveway. I was like, there. So if you want advice, we make life way too complex. I just spoke at a thing in Toronto a few months ago, and this guy was like, I wasn't even talking deeply, but, I told my story, and he goes, I want to apologize. I don't know if you noticed, but I walked out during your thing. I was like, oh, it's okay. I said, did I something say like trigger you or like, he goes, no, just while you were talking, I just felt I was supposed to call my old college roommate, and I called him, and I can't tell you what happened, but I'll just tell you the timing of that call. He needed it. And I don't know the story, but that's my advice. We make life way too complex. You might be thinking of somebody right now listening to this, or if you just ask yourself the question, who haven't I talked to in a while that might need a phone call or a text? Again, you don't have to move to a third world country to do something significant. You can make a phone call and listen to those promptings. I'm a guy that has a unique perspective on life because I've died once already. When that happens, you just look at life differently. And every day I try. I don't always succeed, but every day I say either I want to learn something today or I want to teach something. I want to have an interaction with somebody that wasn't planned. I'm going to do something significant before this day ends.
Robb Nash, man, I'm so glad I got to meet you. And I'm glad I got to watch the documentary, and I hope everybody listening takes some time out of their busy day to check it out. It launches tonight at 9 p.m. If you're reading this, is there a specific website you want to direct people to?
Yeah, if you want to go to robbnash.ca, find out more about what we do. Yeah. If you want to go on socials, it's Robb Nash. Robbnash.ca is, if you want to find out more, find out more about how we do it and everything we do and sponsors that allow us to continue to do this without charging.
I was going to ask about the funding, but can somebody listening contribute some money?
Yeah, you can donate, and that allows us to get to these kids that because there's just such a lack of.
Well, there's another
support.
call to action I'm going to throw on the list here. Go to robbnash.ca. Rob's got two B's.
Either way, robbnash.ca goes
smart.
to the right one.
All right. robbnash.ca. Give what you can. You're doing important work, Rob. I'm not going to tell you I'm glad that semi hit you when you were 17.
Appreciate it.
But you know what? That was driving too fast on an icy highway. Shit happens. But this shit that's happening now, this is you, buddy.
Let me close with this. How about this?
Yeah.
Everybody says everything happens for a reason. That's what we started with. Okay? This is my new perspective. Everything happens with potential. My accident had the potential to leave me angry, bitter, suicidal the rest of my life, but there's the potential you can take your story and turn it around. Tragedy can tear apart an individual, can tear apart a family, it can tear apart a school, a business, a country. Tragedy has the potential to tear people apart, but it has the potential to bring people together. We have to make the decisions of what we're going to do. Everything happens with potential. One person gets cancer and they look at life differently. They make every day count. They change their diet. The next person gets cancer and they get bitter and angry. It's how the only thing we really get to determine is what we're going to do with these tough days, because we're all going to face a tough day. We're all going to see trauma. It all happens with potential. What are you going to make out of it?
And that brings us to the end of this 1,587th show. I could do another 1587 shows. I won't do a show more important than this one, Rob.
Thank you for this, man.
You can go to torontomike.com to find out how to follow me, find out about older episodes, upcoming episodes. Much love to all who made this possible. That's Great Lakes Brewery, Palma Pasta, RecycleMyElectronics.ca, Raymond James Canada, Maneris, and Ridley Funeral Home. See you all tomorrow. And Talia Schallinger, I butchered her name 100 times, Rob. I can pronounce Robb Nash. Talia, musician, broadcaster. She's my special guest. See you all then.